Let me sip my coffee. It's all gone. What's poppin'? My name is Jordan McLeod. Thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. And if it's your first time, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell. I have a special guest here with me. For this particular video, she's going to share her story, and I just want her to open up and just introduce herself. Who are you? What is your name?
Hey, I'm Nicole.
Nice. So, where are you from? Tell us a little bit about, your background. Where you from, how you grew up, all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm from Alaska, grew up in Arkansas, where my parents raised my sister and my brother and then they divorced when I was 10, and my mom moved up to Alaska and took me and my sister with her. And that was pretty miserable because I had to uproot from my life and then start a new one. And so yeah, that's kind of the basis of hopping back and forth from Arkansas and Alaska.
Yeah. Did you grow up without your dad, or what was your relationship with your dad since?
He was in my life. He got remarried, so I had a new family with her and then a new family with my stepdad. So I spent the summers with my dad and the winters with my mom. And then I didn't like Alaska anymore, so I went back to Arkansas and I spent the winters with him and the summers in Alaska. So it was perfect.
Wow.
That's when I figured it all out.
Wow. Who are you? Are you close with your mom or your dad? Who you?
My mom's my best friend.
Okay.
Yeah, I love her so much. She's definitely been there, my rock. My dad and I weren't always very close. We had a lot of tiffs, a lot of arguments, fights, and we didn't see eye to eye a lot of the times. And he and I are very similar, so we would hold things in and then explode on each other. So, but now we're a lot better. God's definitely redeemed that.
Yeah. Who were you before Christ? Before up until that point of coming to know Christ for yourself. What were you all about?
Well, I was, oh man, I was confused. Let's just say that. I was an alcoholic, a drug addict, basketball player, so a lot of jock type, also, and I was a homosexual.
You play basketball? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep, I played basketball through high school and then 2 years in college.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was really fun. Kept me on my toes, but my coach was horrible and sucked the fun out of it, and I didn't love the game anymore, so I just kind of quit playing.
So during that time, just different things that, you said that you're confused, and I know that there's been a lot of people that I've talked to specifically that they were confused with certain things pertaining to just in their life. Yeah. Not even so much just about God, of course that's part of it, but also people just feeling really confused. What's some of the things that you wrestled with while you were confused in those different lifestyles that you were a part of?
Yeah, so I grew up in a Baptist home. Parents would talk about God, so I kind of had an understanding. And then I gave my life to the Lord when I was, I believe, 5 years old. But that was mainly because I didn't want to go to hell, and that scared me. So I was like, yeah, I get baptized, I'm good. It's, get out of jail free card. But I didn't understand salvation. I didn't understand repentance. I just didn't want to go to hell. Yeah. So I felt like, okay, this is great. Well, then the things that happened to me throughout my life, I always wondered, okay, if there was a God, why did these things happen?
Wow.
I was abused for many years, sexually abused from the time I honestly can't tell you how old I was when it started, but it stopped when I was 12 years old. But it opened doors for other men in my life to abuse me, but I was also or take advantage of me drinking and things like that.
Wow.
My dad and I, like I said earlier, we were pretty physical with each other, so I had a lot of the physical, emotional, mental abuse there. So it, if God is man, then men did these things and God was never there to protect me.
Wow.
It totally, I hated it. I hated the idea of God, and I was like, you know what, you're not really real. But I would still like wear a cross around my neck, and I was like, yeah, I believe in him, but I didn't really believe in him. So I ran as fast as I could, as long as I could, until he encountered me in a real way. So
did you grow up with like trust issues and anger?
Yeah.
With not even just pertaining to men, but like God, or like just people in general? Like what's some of the things that you're wrestling with during that time of your struggles, and what was also done to you as well?
Yeah. I actually still deal, not as much,
Right.
but with trust issues in general. There's throughout, everyone has a hidden agenda in my back then.
Yeah.
Now it's, God's really been working and refining that. But back then, everyone had a hidden agenda. If they wanted something out of me, they would ask.
Right.
And I'm like, well,
There's always like a catch.
There's always a catch, yeah. And so I didn't trust anybody. I didn't, and I hated the world. I was angry. I fought a lot. I've gotten into some fist fights, but mainly it was my bedpost, the wall, the ground, a brick wall that would get most of my anger. Then I started smoking cigarettes when I was in high school to help just kind of like curb the anger. And then I started drinking. I think the first time I ever took a sip of alcohol, I was like 12 years old. And then it was like, oh, hey, this numbs pain. Like, this is cool. And then I started taking opiates, and that even numbed emotional pain. I'm actually writing about it in my book, where the first time I took opiates, I was like curious to see if it would numb emotional pain, because I knew it numbed physical pain.
Wow.
And then, so when I did, I snuck my stepmom's opiate, and when I did, I was feeling pretty emotional that day, and it totally just kicked it out. So I was hooked.
Wow. Wow. What was that pivotal moment for you when, like, the lifestyle that you're living, things that happened to you, all this chaos, all this craziness, all this darkness? When was that pivotal moment where, like, God revealed himself to you and it just kind of knocked those barriers down, so to speak?
Yeah, it was definitely in 2017, October 7th, 2017. So, like I said, I was homosexual. I lived that life. That's who I thought I was. I didn't think that I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. I thought I was ugly, all these things. I wasn't valued as a female, so I was like, well, then I must, my voice is a little deeper than most females, and like all these things. I was like, well, God made a mistake. And so I started like going towards transgender, and I was almost engaged to this girl. I moved but before that, I moved to Colorado and kind of lived it up, lived the party scene. I was a bouncer at a nightclub.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, looking at me now, just like, eh. But yeah, I was a bouncer at a nightclub, and I did all these, like, I did everything that you could think of. And so my girlfriend and I at that time moved to Alaska. And I guess you could say like God was kind of tugging at my heart, because I found journals of that time, and I was like crying out to God, but nothing. I was like, well, I need help. But he would show himself in little things. I started to, like, for instance, I didn't have any gas in my car, completely empty, and I was trying to get to school. I didn't have any money. I scrounged around. I found $1 in change, went to the gas station, and like I had a Jeep, so they are gas guzzlers. Went to the gas station. I was like, hey, I only have $1. Can you help me out? And they're like, yeah, well, hopefully that gives you something. And my school is about 35 minutes away from where I was. And it was past empty. So I was like, well, okay, God, like, I need you. I have to get to school. And I ended up getting to school, and then somebody at school gave me $20 for gas.
Wow.
So, like, he was revealing himself to me in little ways.
In those ways,
yeah. But the true, like, just hit me in the face. Total, lift the veil was October 7th, 2017. I was at ladies retreat with my mom. I would still go to church every once in a while because it made my mom happy, and I didn't really get it, but so I went to a ladies retreat because my cousin Emily, she's a worship leader and has a worship ministry. She came up to lead worship at women's retreat, and so my mom's like, you don't get to see her very often, you should go, kind of like a healthy guilt trip. So I ended up going, and the last day, she wrote this song called Rooted, and the theme of the song, or the theme of women's retreat, was rooted. And it's crazy because my roots were, I grew up in a Bible-believing home, and so God kind of used that to set me up in a way, I guess you should say. Yeah. But he I guess, it was the last song. We were all hanging out, singing, and then all of a sudden I felt like this heat coming over me. I'm like, this is weird. Like, what is this? And I had chills, and I don't really get emotional, or I didn't. Now I'm just always emotional, but
it's not a bad thing.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Even Jesus wept. But yeah, I started getting emotional. I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is this? And I heard God's voice for the first time, because I never really heard it before. Maybe I have, and I didn't know it was his voice. But he's like, I'm not ashamed of you. I love you, and I have more for you. And see, I had an engagement ring. I was going to propose to my girlfriend in December, and he encountered me in October. And I knew in that moment I couldn't live that life anymore. I had to break up with her. I knew that I was going to die, spiritually, physically. My life was going to be death, and I didn't want that. Like, the wages of sin equals death became real in that moment. And but it wasn't like a fire and brimstone. He presented it with so much love. And so that was like the life-changing moment, and the true repentance came in.
And then you started to follow Jesus during that time. And what has it been since that moment until now? What's been your journey with things that God has brought you through, and things that you faced?
Yeah, well, the refining process sucks, but there's so much growth. That's been the hardest part, is like getting deep-rooted lies and deep-rooted emotions out. And like, I did soul ties, so I've done soul ties. I've walked through some healing, but it's still a process. And so through this, God's really shown me like what a daughter is like, and to value myself the way He created me to be, which has been beautiful in itself. It's hard because I still struggle with insecurities, but He's definitely refining that and showing me it's not about the external, it's about the inward and the heart. And my relationship with Him has grown so much. I try not to refer to Him as God. It's more Father, and just more of an intimate, and now I can't help but tell people about Jesus. It's just, it's in my DNA. I have to, and even if it's as simple as like, hey, Jesus loves you, just to see Him smile. I get rejected, but it's those ones that are deeply impacted is what matters. And He's bringing me on a process of writing a book, and that's been a journey in itself. And He's teaching me what solitude is like, the difference between solitude and isolation. And yeah, it's been really good. But that's kind of like where I am right now, and just being obedient, learning how to be more obedient, because I was more of a rebellious child. So me too. Oh man, it's hard, but there's nothing better than pleasing the Father's heart. So
what's been like your journey with some of the things that you struggled with before? Just different. You've lived different life. There's a lot of different lifestyles that you're living.
Yes.
So what's been some of the things that would be like a struggle in terms of temptations or maybe things that would kind of come up and flare up to kind of, in terms of like the flesh or things of the world that kind of like pull you, that wants to pull you back. What's that journey been like?
That one was really easy to battle when when God first wrecked me. I was, and I still am on fire, but then it was just like, it's like a babe, you know? And so immediately when I started feeling things, I was like, nope, I rebuke it. Nope, I rebuke it. And then a year passed, and I still do that sometimes, but then I'm like, well, you know, there's times where I start settling. I'm like, well, this is okay, you know, and then because I know my heart behind it, and then I'm like, I found, okay, say last year? No, actually not too long ago. So my grandpa died, and he and I were really close, and like there was a lot of deaths. There was a couple other people that have died that I knew, and back then I would resort to drinking. And I'm like, well, you know, so recently I was like, well, I'll have a glass of wine or something, and then that turned into a couple, and then and I found myself drinking for the wrong reasons, and I had to check myself, and so I took a break. I took a month from drinking anything, and I just dug in. I was like, God, I can't go back to this. I can't, like, I have to run to you first. I can't run to anything else because substance isn't going to do anything for me. And then I have pain in my body constantly, which
Like now?
Now I do. And I have arthritis in my foot and things like that. So I went to the doctor, and they gave me muscle relaxers. And I'm like, oh, nope, I can't do that, you know. I have to be really cautious. So to counteract those things, I check with myself. If I'm in a lot of pain, I'm like, okay, how's my head? Where's my head space? Where am I? You know, have I gone to the Lord first? Have I prayed about it? How's my heart? You know, do a heart check, and I do a full body check. Okay, how's my pain level? Is it manageable? Can I take some ibuprofen first? Or, you know, and then I just do, and then I pray and ask for peace. And if I don't feel peace, I don't do it. But if I do feel peace, then I'm like, okay. But that's, I still have to be cautious with it. You know, I'm not, what's been amazing is it's been like a flip. I don't get angry like I used to anymore. I get frustrated and I get annoyed, but I don't have that rage like I used to. I mean, I remember punching holes in walls and then like coming to a realization like, whoa, what just happened? You know, not really, just like basically the way people say you saw red, you know, and now I can't even tell you the last time that happened. Like God's totally done a flip on that.
Wow.
So, but yeah, with those temptations, you know, it's hard because sometimes I'm human, you know, I make mistakes. But I have a repentant heart. I have to know. I can't allow shame to keep me from going into the throne room and asking for forgiveness and like, okay, let's get back up and keep going.
The reason why I asked you that, because a lot of people think that, you know, Christians have it all together and that we're perfect in everything, especially when people have certain platforms and everything. I've opened up to a lot of people, especially through video and stuff like that, with things that I've struggled with when I was, you know, first coming to the faith around that time and then up until this point, you know, and so I think it makes it more real, authentic, because it is, you know what I mean? Because although that we're followers of Jesus doesn't mean that we have it all together. And we don't struggle and we don't have, you know, stress or anxiety in those things. And of course we want to and desire to bring those to God, but that doesn't mean that, you know, God is like, let me just take away all these certain things, you know what I mean? And I feel like it just keeps it where we desire to come to him with those things. So that's why I asked that question.
I think that's really good. I dealt with a lot of shame, and then guilt. You know, there's difference between guilt and shame. And guilt, I say, is like, you know, you stole something, you're guilty. you did something wrong, and
Right,
of course it doesn't attack your identity like shame does.
Yeah.
You know, whereas like I am this.
Yeah, it's just on you.
And the shame is that sneaky, invisible enemy that not a lot of people realize that they have, and so that's why it's so dangerous.
Yeah.
And I dealt with that. I've held up until recently, and I still find it trying to creep back in. And guilt brings me to the Father. Shame keeps me away from Him.
Come on.
And so I have to be able to distinguish between the two. And when I start feeling shame, when I start feeling like I am, then I have to check with myself and like rebuke it, because it's like, wow, no, I can't allow this to keep me from the Father, because if that happens, then I just go right down. It's so easy for me to backslide.
Yeah.
So
What would be your advice to people that may have that people are watching and they can relate to a lot of what you're talking about? You know what I mean? So what would you say to them, like in a quick way of like to encourage them, and different things like that, if that makes sense?
yeah, it's okay to not be okay. Definitely, it's okay to not be okay.
What a
Don't allow.
surprise.
I know, right? Don't allow like feelings determine your walk with God. And with those feelings, take it to Him, because He says, "Render your heart before the Lord." Or it says it in Joel, "Render your heart before the Lord, for He's slow to anger, full of mercy." And I looked up like what is render? What is the most impactful meaning from this? And it's to shred, to rip open, to sever. And so like no matter what you're feeling, He wants you to like shred your heart before Him, because He is slow to anger. He's full of mercy. He's full of grace. And He wants to take that away. It says, "My yoke is easy, my burden is light." Let me take those things from you.
Yeah.
So
I love that. Yeah, you're. I think just from getting to know you so far and just watching you from afar too, I was like, man, she's on fire. And so it's just cool just to hear your story even more, because really the viewers and myself are hearing things for the first time, and so it's been just an encouragement just for you to open up in that way and really touch people. So
yeah, for sure. Thanks
you
for
so much.
interviewing me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. If this video has impacted you in any way, I hope that you would share it with other people. Until then, I'll see you on my next video. Deuces.